let's begin. I am so thankful I have Angie Lindberg with me today. She is a guinea pig. We're going to try doing some interviews, both for print publication and for the Ride and Tie YouTube channel. And Angie is our first one. So thank you so much for being with us, Angie.
Thank you for asking me.
You took on a huge task recently. You put on the Ride in the Pines at H. Cooper Black State Park in Cheraw, South Carolina, and it was my privilege to be there, and it was a wonderful ride. I'm curious, what made you decide that you want to do that crazy thing of being a ride manager?
Well, I have to say it was probably a progression of thoughts and ideas that just sort of came to fruition. And it's just, one of those things that I thought, well, why not give it a try? So last year in 2021, at the end of April, I put on a NATRC competitive trail ride as a ride manager. And we had a decent turnout. And, I had some endurance friends. I do both competitive trail ride and endurance. And I had some endurance friends say, why don't you put on an endurance ride? We'll be happy to help you out. And it was more geared towards one of the, it's a state forest owned by North Carolina up here where I live. It's called Hill Forest, and we ride there quite often to train. And that's where they were, thinking and brainstorming about putting on an endurance ride there. So I started thinking about it, and I was like, if I'm going to do another competitive trail ride there at H. Cooper Black, why not add in the endurance group? I've got a lot of people that'll help give, support and help out with the ride, and to make it a bigger event, to also have a better turnout. So I thought, I'll give it a try.
Good. And then you decided to throw Ride and Tie in there as well. And I'm calling what you did down there running a 3-ring circus because you had endurance and NATRC and Ride and Tie. And so I'm curious, what was it like to prepare for all 3 of those and to manage all 3 of those at the same time?
Right. So how this came into play with adding in the Ride and Tie, I reached out to Dr. Bob Marshall as being my head vet. And he said, why don't you think about adding in the Ride and Tie folks? They're a lot of fun. They have their own ride manager. They're just really manage everything on their own, and they're a lot of fun. And I'm like, why not? If I have an experienced person, ride manager for the Ride and Tie folks, it sounds like you guys can sort of manage a lot of that on your own, but I'll just sort of be the oversight of everything. I'll add you in. So I reached out to Allison Zettonian and I said, how would you guys like to be a part of the event? I'm calling it an event because of having the 3 different organizations as well as several different sanctionings. And so she said, absolutely. And so that's kind of how it transpired into being in the Ride and Tie endurance and NATRC competitive trail.
Okay.
Now, I think the other thing that's important to think about too, when I was putting this into fruition, is we're all in the same boat of needing a lot of trails. We're looking for being able to do the distance, the endurance ability of it. And those facilities there at H. Cooper Black really can accommodate, all of the trails. There's hundreds of miles of trails. You could easily get lost if you were just wandering out without any kind of trail marking. And the facility actually has, several electric campsites, primitive sites, and field camping, bathhouses, as you saw when you were there. It just really is a nice facility.
It was a great facility. That part of South Carolina is all pine trees and sand, as you know. The name of the ride is Riding the Pines, and one horse lost, I forgot what it was, a shoe or something, and a junior rider said to the owner, "Oh, I saw the shoe. It's in the sand right next to a pine tree." And we all laughed and said that didn't narrow it down very much. But it was a wonderful facility because of all of the different amenities they had. And again, I had never been there before, and I did enjoy the trails an awful lot. It was great. So you managed the NATRC ride, and then you went from the one ring to the three ring circus. What was different going to from one to three?
Well, I had a lot of support from Patsy Gowan, who's been ride manager for several years. Probably, I think she said close to 30 years or something like that, down there in that area, you know, the Sugarloaf area, or even at H. Cooper Black, managing many different rides. And so I reached, or had been talking with her, and she said she would mentor me and help me out with being, you know, ride manager for the endurance portion. And since I already had 1 year under my belt of doing the competitive trail NATRC portion, I decided, yeah, I'll give that a try. I also had a mentor from the competitive trail side, Paula Riley. She is my support team there. So what really made it all work is the support team of everybody across the board. We had Eric Reuter, who was the secretary, and he managed a lot of the registrations and financial things, just all of the paperwork for the ride and tie portion as well as the endurance portion. And then I had Paula Riley, who was my season secretary on the NATRC competitive trail side. So all of the volunteers that came in to really make it happen, the vets, we had Dr. Bob Marshall, we had Amy Spees, we had Vicki Salt, who were the endurance vets, very experienced on what they do on their side. They knew how to run everything. So it wasn't really a whole lot that I had to tap into. They just knew how to, you know, run their area. We had Lori Underwood and Carol Thompson as the timers. You know, they knew everything that they needed to do. So they were your guys' timers as well for ride and tie, your vets as well. And then we had different vets under the competitive trail side, as well as a different timer over there. So the way the facility was set up at H. Cooper Black, I had my Kawasaki mule or my truck that I would drive around in, and I could just basically go up and down one main road going to the vet area where the competitive trail folks were at, and then over to where the endurance and ride and tie vet in area was, and all the way up to the clubhouse where Eric Reuter and the secretaries were sitting and, you know, registering everybody. So it was just, you know, what the main road I'm talking about, going from the clubhouse to where the arena was down to the other end. And so it really made it easy for me as, you know, the ride manager, overseeing everything, just checking, you know, all the way through. Is everything going great here? Everything okay here? What do we need to do over here? You know, and a lot of just great volunteers that were pitching in and helping out wherever I needed some help.
Super. So one of the things that as you know, and benefited from, ARC and Ride and Die have a partnership now. And one of the things that I love about that is just what you said a minute ago, that you already had to worry about vets and the venue, where you're going to be, and the marking the trail and that kind of thing. And so it seems to me that it just makes it's almost a no-brainer that you would want to include other similar disciplines. Did you find unexpected costs or difficulties though, because you had the three events together?
Not with now the NATRC competitive trail, they sort of fall under a different budget because they're the secretary that we have for that was just managing that differently, and the vets are all under that budget. So I had a completely separate budget sheet and insurance filing that we had to do for that. So I sort of rolled the ride and tie and endurance under the same budget sheet and category, and worked really close with Allison, the ride manager there. You know, there was a stipend that was offered from Ride and Tie to help pay for the vets for the weekend. Now, because Ride and Tie wanted to do 3 days instead of the 2 days of endurance, you know, a lot of your registration, or not, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say a lot, but from your registration fees, that helped pay for the vets to stay for the 3rd day, as well as the timer to stay for the 3rd day. So between Allison and I, you know, we worked out the different various costs. And so it really was just very seamless. It was extremely easy. We also collaborated on purchasing the awards and prizes, to be able to give out to you guys. There were the cups, that said Ride in the Pines on there. So I said, I'm going to be purchasing some of these for our completion awards. Would you like to get some of those as well? And she said, absolutely. And so, we just really collaborated on a lot of efforts, and it just made it work. And another reason why I decided to go and add the 3 events together, and I think this is really key and very important, is instead of offering an intro ride for the endurance section, we have a lot of people that are interested in getting into endurance or wanting to, push their horse maybe into a faster speed or a longer distance. Well, that's where the competitive trail piece can come in, through NATRC. They can really help teach people, here's what you need to do to help prepare your horse for camping overnight. Here's what you need to do to prepare your horse for longer distances. They have more checks of metabolics and more of a thorough vet check, where you have to go out, trot out, lunge in a circle. So, there's additional things that they do just to help prepare somebody to want to do endurance. And that's why I thought, this would be a great collaboration of adding in that as, those that are interested in getting into endurance. And then you have the AERC endurance rides, the 25, 50-mile rides, when they're ready just to move on into faster speeds and longer distances. And then I think it's just so exciting that we, with adding in ride and tie, people who they want to get off and stretch their legs or run some. And, we as athletes, when we're riding horses, we need to keep ourselves in shape too. So, maybe more people will start getting interested in doing the ride and tie, because getting off and stretching your legs, and it's not like you have to be running at fast speeds, right? Maybe you can talk more about, how to go about preparing or transitioning over into being able to do some of the running along with endurance. But in talking about the collaboration of everybody using the trails and how we can you transition from needing to go either slower speeds or shorter distances all the way up to faster speeds, but also sharing the cross across all of the different organizations at one facility. We have seen that there's a little bit of a decline in some of the horse activity. So if we can pull more people together to be able to collaborate together, maybe we'll draw in more of a crowd and make it a funner event. And that's what I really saw with the Ride and Tie folks being there, just the smiles on your face and seeing how much fun you guys were having, the energy there. It just, it made it so much fun.
And that brings up about really the next question I have, which is, I love it. I think I almost would prefer to do a Ride and Tie event with, usually it's AERC, it's not NATRC as much. And I like it when it happens the way it happened at your ride, which is we're on the same trails as the endurance riders, not exactly the same time, but somewhat, because we can encourage each other, and they kind of typically, I think, enjoy knowing that we're out there and whatnot. However, I am wondering, did you hear of any people that were concerned about that being on the trail with Ride and Tie, or any problems or things that you ran into from that?
No, so that's really interesting that you say that. From both doing NATRC competitive rides and endurance rides, I've actually been at rides where we've had Ride and Tie at both of them. So Nancy Sly, she had a ride up there at her place in Virginia where we combined competitive trail and Ride and Tie on that same weekend. So the NATRC competitive trail riders were very used to seeing Ride and Tie out there on the trails. And when you're passing each other on the trail, you just you talk with each other, you collaborate, and just say coming by, or you see the horses tied to the trees, you just know to be cautious when you're passing by, the horses that may be tied up in the trees. And then I've also experienced, endurance rides I think the one that I was on was a Kings Mountain endurance ride. I think it was the last year that they put it on over there at Kings Mountain. It was extremely muddy that year.
I
And
was there. I remember.
so I was taking it really slow on that ride because it was pretty slippery, but I ended up in the mix with the ride and tie folks. I'd have a runner pass by me, and then I'd see a horse tied up to the tree. I think across all of the organizations, everybody's very familiar with ride and tie and how you guys operate. So there wasn't any comments or negativity or anything. It was just all like, oh yeah, we've been there, we've done that before.
Good. And I want to compliment you. Actually, at your ride meeting, you did a marvelous job of helping those that might not have ever experienced it know, if you see a horse tied to a tree, it's okay. Don't untie it. Or and letting them know that during the mid-race vet checks, if they will let the riding tires go up ahead, because the clock is still running on us, that it's wonderful for them to know that, so we don't want to feel like we're rude and pushing our way up, and then also preparing your timers and your other folk to know that mid-race vet check, typically riding tie don't take tack off, so don't yell at the, you need to pull all that tack off that horse, that kind of thing. You did a great job with that. I think I actually felt more included in your ride meeting than I have maybe at almost any other one that I've been to. And so I want to commend you on that. And we're doing this for this interview kind of thing is for hopefully ride managers. And so I would say that maybe I just ask you kind of what were some things you were thinking about in that meeting to help people who had never heard of this crazy thing called ride and tie, get them ready for it.
Well, I think one of the things was just basically educating people on who you are and what you do and how we collaborate along the trail, or even, in the vet area and working with the timers. A lot of people, I think, are pretty seasoned now as to what ride and tie are, because we've seen you come to a lot more rides, and that's really exciting that you guys are starting to get integrated into a lot more of the rides. So it's more of the new people that will be coming in where they just need to be educated, or we just remind the seasoned people at other rides, this is how it works, and this is how we're all gonna collaborate on the trail. Now, one thing that's really interesting, and I don't know if you have one of these pictures, but Becky Pierman, when she was on the trail, do you remember on James Road? That was that main road coming by the kennels up into camp. She got a picture of somebody that was doing the competitive trail, somebody that was doing ride and tie, and then somebody that was doing endurance, all in one shot.
Oh, wow.
And it's really cool because or I'll find it and get it for you too. But everybody and they were day riders that were out there as well too, just seeing everybody together. It was really neat. It was really fun.
Good. Did you hear stories from other competitors or vets or timers about any of the interactions between the ride and tie and the others?
I just received very positive feedback from both the competitive trail riders and the endurance. And I think, the competitive trail riders were a little bit concerned as to how it was all going to work, with so many events and organizations going on, and possibly even the energy, so there were a little bit of concerns ahead of time from them. But, at the end, all they had was just positive remarks about how well it went.
One of the things that happened that weekend, as you well know, is we had a loose riding tie horse who actually, he didn't just pull loose from the tie, he pulled a little pine sapling out of the ground. He was tied to a tree he probably should have been tied to. Tell me that story from your perspective, because I know you were involved in it a little bit. I think you were.
Yeah, so this is another interesting story. And I was up by the vet area. I think I was sitting on my Kawasaki mule, just talking with some of the vets or just checking in with some things. And Patsy Gowan, who was doing the endurance, I don't remember if she was doing the 50 or the 25 that day, she called me and she said, "Oh, we have a loose horse. It's coming full steam up James Road. coming towards camp, and I said, I'm on it, I got it, you know. So I took off and started heading down that way and was getting close to the kennels. And as I was coming through camp, I was alerting everybody saying, we got a loose horse, we got a loose horse. And then there was a farrier that was there, and they were in their truck, and they were coming the other way, and I, you know, alerted them. So they turned around and, you know, kind of was following behind me. So this horse, and remind me, well, I don't know if you want to say the horse's name, but
Dakota was his name.
Dakota, thank you. So Dakota was going full steam, like a freight train, and he was just hauling past all of the other horses, you know, as they were, you know, finishing up their rides, or either going down the trail or coming up that road, whichever way they were going. And I saw him coming straight towards me. So I took my Kawasaki mule and tried to cut him off, you know, and block him, and, you know, was jumping out to go and grab at him. But he was like, nope, not stopping for you. And so then the farrier in the truck behind me, you know, they were able to block him and stop him and grab him. So then I think I had somebody in my Kawasaki mule with me, and I said, look, if you can just, you know, drive this back to the camp here, I'm going to walk this horse in. So I grabbed the horse and took him straight up to Dr. Bob, and I said, well, this one's going to need to be checked over, because he was panting really heavy. You know, but we, you know, just people from out of the works, they all come in and they start soaking him down. You know, everybody's helping to cool him down and get his heart rate down. And then, you know, I think it was your Ride and Tie folks that just took over from there. But that was a funny story. And then I saw your video that you posted out there of him, and that was hilarious.
Yeah. Well, my perspective from that, not to retell the story, but the endurance folk were so wonderful. I was a little worried people might say, yeah, you tie horses to trees, that's going to happen. But what I heard more often was, yeah, that happened to me one time. You know, I got tossed and my horse took off, and I was so thankful to people that helped and all that kind of thing. That was great. And then the other piece, I'm thankful, I don't know if it was you, I know it was your mule, your Kawasaki that took my partner back, because he actually jumped in the back of the pickup truck to try to get
the farrier.
Yeah. Oh, that was the farrier. Okay. Well, I wasn't trying. When the horse came by me, he was still dragging the pine tree. And so he was pretty sure that tree was going to catch him. He was chasing him, and he didn't know why he couldn't outrun it. And so he blew by me. And when he blew by my partner, he jumped in the pickup truck. And so I kind of thought we were out of the race at that point, because you can't use a pickup truck to get yourself to camp. And so for you to, or whoever it was that took him back,
I drove him.
That was super. So we were able to continue to compete, because it wasn't our horse that was loose. So yeah, I was right, so thankful to the. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we were confused I was a little bit confused as to, well, who's the runner that goes with his horse? Yeah. And so was his name Matt? That's the runner.
Mark was my partner. Mark. Yeah.
Okay. So Mark, yeah, he thought he was about out, and I was like, well, I can take you back down to your point as to where you need to pick back up. And so we did. I just, drove down there as fast as I could to the point as to where he needed to start back up again, and you guys were able to finish off. But that was quite the adventure there.
Yeah, it sure was. And that's one of the reasons we do these sports, are not to put horses in jeopardy or anything, but we get stories and we have to overcome difficulties, and it really does bring up, great stories back and makes us want to get out there and try again or whatever. That also brings up, I want to just, for folks that are maybe concerned about, what is it like to be running these two events at the same time? One of my other wonderful memories from your event is that after all that happened, Mark and I were slowed up some, because he had to go back out about 4 miles and run in, and I'd already come in on the horse. And so I went out running back out, and another team caught us because they weren't going through all the trauma that we had kind of gone through. And it was a all-female team, Carrie and Barb. And about the time that Mark caught me on the horse on the second loop is about the time they passed us. And we were kind of nipping at their heels, but we were also, I think, slowly dropping back a little bit. And the nice thing about the second loop often is we'll usually start the second loop if it's the same loop that the endurance riders using, we'll start it ahead of them because they're waiting for the hold. But then they catch up pretty quick once their hold is through, because they're coming through a little faster than we are, because they're not having to depend on runners. And so we start getting past, and that's when they encourage us and we encourage them. And it's usually a great thing. But of course, endurance is largely a female dominated sport. And so these women would pass Mark and me and encourage us. And then when they would catch Barb and Carrie and realize that these two men were chasing this female team, they decided they would try to help the female team along. And so they would say, they're 2 minutes behind you, or they're 3 minutes behind you. Go girls, beat the boys. And that's so much fun. That for them to have that extra little advantage was fine. But I really like the teasing and let's go on girls. And the girls did beat the boys that day, which isn't all that uncommon. It happens all the time. But that's another great example for me of just how much fun it is for everybody to be out there kind of competing together.
Yeah.
Did you hear any other great stories from that weekend?
Well, I just saw everybody's smiles all the time. When I guess when everything started, every single morning, I would go out to the start, send off the 50 milers, and then let's see, the next group to go out was the competitive trail riders. So I'd run over there and get them timed out. And then I'd run over and get the 25 milers timed out and started. And then we had your group that was coming, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, let me get you guys started out so you know which way to head out on the trail. And when your group would come along, out there was pretty hot and toasty and in the sand, and I can't imagine that would be any easy thing to do, to be running in that sand and that heat. But you guys always had smiles. The kids, the juniors, they're jumping up and down and just having so much fun. It was just the energy that just really made it very enjoyable. And that's what sticks in my mind, I guess, as far as sharing a story, is just the energy, the positivity, and Dakota and his runaway freight train, and just everybody, catching him and cooling him down and taking care of him as a big family, as a big team.
Good. So I'm assuming, therefore, that from what we've said, that if you were to manage another ride, you might agree to try another 3 Ring Circus, huh?
Well, absolutely. It was definitely a lot of work, and it took a lot of planning, a lot of collaboration. Patsy Gowan put a lot of work into getting all of those trails remarked. I think they'd been marked several years ago, but a lot of trail markers have come down. So they've been remarked. They're, in the next year or whatever, there might be where you have to just go back over and check the trails and make sure that all the marking is still there. But that's a lot of the hard work, is just making sure that those trails are marked. And we've put together a Facebook page so that everybody can collaborate and receive information. And I think that's one of the biggest things too, is when you're starting a ride, is just getting the word out there about the ride and getting a lot of things established. I've got a lot of maps that were created and made. I've got a schedule. I think what I'm trying to say is a lot of the footwork, the hard footwork, has been done. So in my mind, I'm hoping that maybe next year I won't have to put quite as much time into it as I had before, because a lot of the structure and the foundation has been laid out. It's always the work of getting the volunteers, getting your vets all settled. And we had the food truck and we had some vendors. So, getting all of that laid out again. And then just making sure that we get enough people registered so that it covers the costs of the ride. So all of that to say, in theory, yes, I think it would be fun to do another ride again, but it really takes a team and support of everybody. So, if I'm still waiting for feedback from people, I'd like to know, what can we do to make it better? What kind of suggestions do you have? And from that, then, we can maybe, if everybody wants to do it again, then, and they're willing to help me, then let's give it a try again.
All right. Well, the last question, advice that you would give to a person who's maybe either thinking about being a ride manager, period, or maybe as an experienced ride manager and thinking about adding ride and tie, what advice would you give them?
Oh, it's just so easy to add you guys to everything. You know, it just depends on how many days Ride and Tie wants to ride, yeah, or do their run and ride. But you know, it really is quite easy when you have the collaboration of a Ride and Tie manager like Allison was. She just managed everything as far as I said, okay, we have all the trails marked. Here are all of my maps. I gave her all of the maps of the competitive trails, the trails that the competitive riders were going to use, and the timing of everything as well too. And I gave her the maps of everything that we were going to be using for the endurance. And I said, you pick what you want to use and where you want to go. And she did. She just, you know, took care of all that. She took care of all of the registrations and everything as well too. So honestly, I think it was just, it's really easy to incorporate Ride and Tie into everything.
Super, super. Well, thank you again so much for talking with me, and hope that I'll get to see you not only next year. Every ride you mentioned today, I was at. So the Kings Mountain one and the one up at Iron Mountain. And so we'll be crossing paths. I know a lot, so we're kind of in the same circle for sure. But thank you so much,
Nice.
and hope to see you soon.